I've shown you a couple of games by Daniel Dubov from the Russian Championship, and I thought it was only fair that we looked at a game from the winner, Jan Nepomniachtchi. And this is also pretty spectacular. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And do consider supporting us via Patreon. Enjoy the rewards. Check out new videos and stuff. And via PayPal as well. I hope you've enjoyed the channel this year. We simply can't keep going without your support. So do consider making a contribution. Okay, now here we go with this game. Nepo with white. He won the Russian Championship with 7.5 out of 11. And here he's playing against Andrei Esipenko, who is only 18 years old and obviously a real talent, already rated 2686, so he's worth watching out for in the future. It's a Petrov, and these lines have been well researched. Bishop d6 was played in this game. Bishop e7 also possible, as well as knight c6 and bishop f5 as well. So bishop d6 in this one. And castles c4. So the aim from white with c4, of course, is to undermine the support for the knight on e4. I remember as a kid thinking this was somehow better for black because black already has the knight on e4 and is somehow a move ahead. But in fact, there is a problem here because it's a little bit premature to have that knight on e4. And with knight c3, white exchanges off this active knight. So that you can see after this, black has made 1, 2, 3 moves with the knight, but white only made 1 with that queen's knight. So you can see that white is a little bit ahead in development. And there's pressure on here as well. Esipenko took on c4 and then bishop f5. Bishop g5 and queen a5. So there have been a few games from this position. Nakamura played rook e1 against Aronian. Giri played knight h4 against Caruana. These are not bad moves. But Nepo went for d5. So it's a very early lunge. And this has also been seen before. So the idea is basically to exploit the fact that this bishop is unprotected. If black could somehow move the knight out of the way and put a rook in the middle, that would be fine. But you can see that black is just a little bit behind in development as that rook can't get in the game. If pawn takes pawn, bishop takes. And there are 2 threats there. And if the queen comes back to defend, knight d4, well, white has a splendid initiative here with a couple of threats. The bishops are beautifully placed. And if queen c3 is also not great, again, white just has beautiful pieces, a lovely initiative. And yeah, it's simply very good for white, actually. So after d5, Esipenko played very prudently. The queen back to c7. Both players playing very quickly. So obviously in their preparation. Now here, okay, rook e1 looks like it's a very sensible move, just claiming the open file. Of course, the move that black wants to be able to play is knight d7. But there is a problem with that. That we can take here and then play bishop e7. And you can see after this exchange there's pressure on f7 and d7 as well. So the natural move can't be played, therefore h6. Attacking the bishop, hoping to push the bishop out of the way, and then, well, it might be possible, for example, to put a rook to d8 if the white bishop drops back along here. Now, Previously, we've seen a game between Kazimjanov and Lei played in the Isle of Man tournament in 2019, the FIDE Chess.com Grand Swiss 2019, just over a year ago. And Rustam played bishop h4, which kind of seems very sensible, and he won very quickly. After this, bishop h5 was a mistake. But in this position, black should take on d3. And this is a bit more comfortable for white, but basically black is developing here, and it's quite playable for black. But instead of bishop h4, Nepo was ready with an improvement. Knight h4. It's interesting that the computers don't particularly like this move. They prefer bishop h4. But Nepo obviously, well, he found a little idea. He was playing, well, he spent 7 minutes over this move. However, I'm sure this was opening preparation. He was probably just kind of checking the details. Didn't want to get it wrong. So now it becomes very tactical, very concrete, as some players like to say. That means you just have to calculate precisely. So, for example, bishop takes h2 is possible. But then this bishop is still attacked, and the bishop, well, is under threat as well. And after bishop h7, bishop e7 is a nice move, attacking the rook and preparing d6, and that's going to win. So that's not good. What about pawn takes bishop? Then knight takes, and, well, white just has a fantastic initiative there. The knight looks at some very sensitive squares. The bishop is still on this splendid diagonal, and one has a feeling that this queen is going to follow up very quickly. Must be good for white. So Esipenko played bishop h7. And now here's Nepo's follow-up. Played very quickly. Bishop takes pawn. So I'm sure that he was still in his preparation. Of course, Nepo has had good reason to prepare this year. If you recall, he's currently leading the candidates tournament along with Maxime Vacher-Legrave. And I'm sure he spent a lot of this year preparing, and he will have lots of ideas up his sleeve. And I have no doubt that this is one of them. Or maybe he just felt, well, I may as well use this one. It might not be that useful for the candidates tournament. Anyway, it looks like prep to me. Queen g7 mate. Threatened. If rook g8, what do we play? We play queen d4. That's rather nasty. And f6 isn't possible because the rook has moved from f8. So after knight f5, black has to take that. And white recaptures. So white is a full piece down. Well, piece for a pawn, but still, that counts as a full piece to me. But black's problem, of course, is that these pieces on the queen side simply aren't in the game. So can black somehow shift his pieces over to the king side to defend? Or will white get there faster than he will? So the move that black would like to play is knight d7, but then bishop d3, and there isn't really a very good defense to queen h7 mate. So that's why Esipenko very quickly played f6, so that his queen can connect with the king side. Well, it's a forced move, but it leaves these squares rather weakened. Rook d1 played after basically a minute and a half, which says to me that Nepo was still in his preparation. So the rook comes into play, and what beautiful harmony there is between white's pieces. And once again, knight d7 is problematic because after this we play rook takes bishop and queen g6. So the queen has been deflected away from the second rank, and queen takes pawn is happening. That's a problem. And if, let me see, queen f4, yeah, we've got rook e7, and if there's a check, then bishop f1. Seems clear enough. So there we go. Knight d7 isn't working. Did you hear my brain kind of clunking there? Had to work that out. So pawn takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. So this rook comes into play. So another really critical moment in the game where black has to decide what to do. And, well, he decided to take the bishop here, which might not be that bad. Esipenko spent almost 40 minutes on that move. He could develop the knight. And in this case, this one isn't working because the queen can still defend along the 7th rank. So what do we play after knight c6? Well, the best move is queen h3. Attacking the pawn on h6. Bishop take, and then black can play bishop takes. Now, if white plays queen takes bishop, then he's slightly better in the endgame. But it's also possible to play king h1 and simply play for the attack. And after this, rook d7. I mean, black is actually on a knife edge here. Mate threatened on e1. g3. Now, the computer says that black is okay here. But this is really difficult. It would be very difficult to defend this in practice. Anyway, let's go back. So I can sort of understand why he didn't play knight c6. Instead, queen takes bishop. Rook takes bishop. Now, this is another fascinating moment in the game where black is absolutely on a knife edge. If you get it wrong, you can lose instantly. So, for example, well, queen takes a2. Perhaps that's no surprise. Then rook takes f6. And, well, with these pieces so far away, dare I say it, in Siberia, then that's obviously winning for white. Okay, what about queen takes c3? Now, this is a beautiful move. White to play and win here. It's very simple, very subtle. Rook e6. I love that move. So the rook protects this one, threatens rook e7 and queen h7 mate. So let's say knight c6, defending, covering the e7 square. But white can win this. Queen g6 attacks this one. Just bear with me while I go through this. Queen d2 defends that pawn. Now, how does white win? Rook e3 cuts the communication here. Okay, the queen does its best. It bounces back here. And then a check. The queen interposes. The queen steps back. And then there is no decent defense to rook h3. Now that's really nice. One thing to note is that because the rooks are doubled, controlling the e-file, then black simply doesn't have time to play a rook in the way, or challenge on the e-file, I should say. Okay, back we go. I think I've covered, well, the main options anyway. But here black does have a defense. Queen f7. Okay, that defends the 7th rank, prepares to come here, or g7, one of these moves. So how does white proceed from this moment? I'll have a slurp of tea, you have a little think. Okay, let's try this one. Threatening rook e7. Well, in that case, knight c6 covers, and actually black is fine. So not that one. What about rook e3? Perhaps with the idea of swinging this one across. Knight c6. No, it's not going to work, this one. Got to be very careful of the back rank. And if rook d7, yeah, rook d8. That's a problem. And the rook is pinned. Nepo played a beautiful move here, h4. I love that. In the middle of the attack, let's just give the king some room, and then there won't be any problems with the back rank. You know, black won't be able to exchange rooks. And as we're going to see, this is actually potentially a very useful attacking piece. So here the difference is clear. If knight c6, then rook d7 really is winning. That's too painful, and of course there's no back rank trick. Well, the rook is on e1 anyway. So h4, queen h7. Now, this is a slight problem for white because it's actually not possible to go any further here. And the only thing to do is to exchange queens and keep ploughing on with this initiative. So the king is in check. Where should the king go? Another really tough decision. We're always told, you know, we shouldn't put our king on the back rank, and that's why Esipenko, I'm sure, perhaps more instinctively than anything else, played king to g6, and it feels safe with these pawns. But it's a mistake. King g8 should have been played, and although white has 2 pawns and the initiative, in fact, black can defend this by playing rook here. And white actually doesn't have anything better than just a perpetual check here. I mean, of course, there are plenty of tries, but basically black can defend. But I can understand why he wanted to come forward to avoid any issues. But now white has a strong move, and yes, it's that move h5 check, which leaves the king in a difficult situation. If king takes pawn, rook g7, and there's no good defense to rook d3 round to h3. So the king has to come forward, but it's in trouble now. Rook takes. So black has to get this knight out to one of these, well, somehow, but it's not coming in the game. So a5 necessary to use the a6 square. Now g3 played after, well, almost 23 minutes by Nepo. In fact, the computer prefers a4 just to fix that pawn. But g3 played. And knight a6 isn't really good enough. King g2, and you can see that the king is in desperate trouble here. Rook takes pawn. We've got moves like, well, there's potentially a check on the 5th rank. There's also king h3 and g4. I mean, the combination of these threats is too much. And if king takes h5, once again we have rook g7, and this is too much. Again, a combination of king h3 and g4, or rook f5 or rook f4. Black is not surviving that. So here Esipenko had to give up his extra piece. It's not much of an extra piece anyway. Rook takes, knight undermining the support for the rook. Rook takes, rook takes. So now we've reached an endgame, which actually, of course, it's better for white, but perhaps with best play, black could make a draw here, but it's very difficult. Let me just show you what happened. Black is still in trouble on the king side, actually. That's the funny thing. Yeah, my computer thinks that a4 should be a draw here, but no doubt Esipenko was in time pressure. And little by little, Nepo makes progress here. Always nice to get the king up in front of these pawns, because then the pawns actually shield the king from checks. And now the king is on the back rank, and this is lost now, one way or another. Let me just take you through to the end. Yeah, of course, in such situations, we always say that the king needs to be on the short side, and then the rook can check from this side of the board. But king g8 just doesn't work here. After this, mate threatened on a8. Notice again these pawns doing a really good job of shielding the king. And here, actually, the pawn just rolls home, and f7. It's a winning position. Back we go. King f6 just played. Mate threatened. So the king went out this way to the long side, as we say. And I'm afraid this one isn't very good for black. Let me take you through to the end. Basically what we have here is just simplifying down into a winning position. Here, Esipenko resigned. If king takes pawn, then rook takes pawn on h6. And the king and pawn are going to shuffle down the board. You can see the king gets in the way. That rook desperately wants to come this side and start checking. But with the king on c6, or this side anyway, not a chance. So this is completely winning now for Jan Nepomniachtchi. So yes, a complex rook and pawn endgame at the end, and perhaps black had a chance, but basically I think the damage had been done earlier. Nepo caught his opponent with a brilliant piece of preparation. It is part of the game. I know lots of viewers decry the extensive and deep opening preparation with computers, and I'm sure that was the case here. But you have to direct the computers in a certain direction, and I just want to take you back to this moment where here knight h4 is definitely not the first choice, or at least the computers that I've seen, it's not their first choice. And yet Nepo appreciated that from a human point of view, this is very, very difficult to meet. And he was right. Thanks very much for watching.